So, wow, this could actually cure Alzheimer's disease based on the research that's been conducted so far. So, saying that, what would be the next steps? This is the Dales Report, and happy to be joined here on the podcast today. Back to the program, Dr. Lyle Oberg, CEO of MYND Life Sciences. Great to have you back as usual, Dr. Oberg. How are things?
Oh, things are wonderful. And thanks very much for having me, Shad.
Yeah, I always love talking to you. Very informative. Probably one of the best responses that we get out of all the psychedelic companies that we cover, knowing the amount of research that's provided and overall just the quality of research that you can share with us each and every time. Wanted to have you on today because you just announced the formation of a new diagnostic biomarker division, which is called MYND Diagnostics Limited. Its focus will be to conduct a clinical trial to identify marker for diagnosing and monitoring depression in response to treatment, as well as various psychedelics. So how exactly does this all work, and what's the significance of it all?
Well, the significance, obviously, we've talked in the past about neuroinflammation and the important part that inflammation plays in depression. So we've now identified a biomarker that is able to pinpoint the level of that depression, so it's able to potentially diagnose, but probably more importantly, it's able to monitor the levels of this particular biomarker and can determine whether you're getting better or getting worse, which signifies a way to go on treatment sooner as opposed to later. And we think this is incredibly important, which is one of the reasons why we started a new subsidiary in MYND, which will be dealing with the diagnostics only.
Wow. So it sounds very, very interesting. Do you feel this method will become kind of like the gold standard for tracking and tracing depression in the body for the industry?
Well, that's what we certainly hope. This certainly is an improvement on the group of symptoms that the DSM-5 actually uses now to diagnose depression. So it becomes the first time that you'll actually see an objective diagnosis of depression and neuroinflammation in general. It may not just be strictly depression, but it may have to do with neuroinflammation and other psychiatric diseases as well.
So can you kind of explain further? I'm getting treatment, whether it's be psilocybin or any specific compound, and then is this a couple days? This is a week after? Is it a couple of weeks? Like, how are you tracking this? And how does it stand to benefit, I guess, before... I don't know if I'm asking the right question, but it's like you can sense or kind of predict this happening before it actually does happen, if I understand that correctly?
Yeah, so what we'll end up doing is having a baseline on a person. So when a person is well, there will be a baseline of this particular marker. And as the biomarker goes up, we can assume that you're getting better. As the biomarker goes down, we can assume you're getting worse. And the big advantage of that, especially in MDD, major depressive disorder, is that patients don't come in crisis because you head it off early. You head it off as it's getting bad. And for anyone who has ever been in a depressed state, they know that there's an episode of leading up to depression. It doesn't just happen significantly overnight. And the important part about treatment then is we can actually tell when you're getting better. So we can tell, we can start decreasing medication, when you can go off medication, and when you have to go back on medication. So we anticipate this being very, very critical in the treatment, an objective way to quantify depression, and very, very important in the treatment of depression.
What do you think this will potentially do for the overall healthcare landscape related to depression?
Well, I think it changes it dramatically. Because what it has the ability to do now is the ability to give a certain diagnosis is what we're anticipating. And with that certain diagnosis comes the ability to treat early, the ability to get in and help the disease before it takes its major toll. So we really feel that this is an important step forward. And I think pretty much every physician in the world is looking for a way to diagnose definitively depression. And that's what we feel we have.
How much more advanced would you say this is in comparison to what we're doing as far as an answer related to depression here today?
Well, if we're at scale 1 today, this would put us at about scale 100.
Wow. So we're going to see big change in the near-term future.
Yeah, that's certainly what I hope. If you can diagnose depression and if you can treat it early, it's like any disease.
Yeah.
If you can treat it early before it becomes a calamity, you're going to be much more successful in treating it than when you're in crisis.
Yeah. So for those learning, how does this support, I guess, your current research division? And another question, like, what's the total addressable market for the biomarker business?
So with our research, we're researching the psilocybin and other psychedelics, as you know, in order to defeat depression.
Mm-hmm.
We feel we're well on our way on that. But now we know what we have to defeat. So we know who would benefit from it. And again, the psilocybins and the psychedelics take away the neuroinflammation, which decreases the depression. So now we can identify those patients that will help. And the key thing to any diagnosis, any treatment in medicine is identifying the right patients. Mm-hmm. And that's what this biomarker will do. Biomarkers in general are a massive market. They're anticipating it being something like $115 billion US by the year 2027. It's increasing right now at a rate of very close to 14% per year. Mm-hmm. So again, it's the importance of making the right diagnosis, getting the right and timely treatment. And that's what biomarkers do all over the place. And for people who are not familiar with biomarkers, for the men out there, for example, PSA, prostatic specific antigen, was one of the first biomarkers. And this is what we're doing is a continuation of that type where you actually see the body's response to an insult. And using that ability, you can treat early, you can diagnose, and that's what we're working on.
So for those trying to learn even a little bit more, what does a biomarker look like? How does it work? How is it part of the human body in order, obviously, to attract stuff like this?
Yeah, so a biomarker, in essence, is a type of a protein. And what happens is it tends to be a proxy for the anti-inflammatory going up or going down. So in our case, for example, it's a proxy on the particular gene that we're studying. If the gene goes up, that's good. Anti-inflammatory isn't work. If the gene goes down, that's bad. Mm-hmm. And our biomarker monitors that gene and shows when it goes up and shows when it goes down.
Outside of news recently, Chief Science Officer Dr. Wilf Jefferies, who's part of your board, recently co-authored a research paper that was published by the Lancet. And for those that don't know, who are watching, that's one of the world's top medical journals. In the research paper, it looked at effective treatment for Alzheimer's disease and related disease of the brain. So is there a takeaway from the study that parallels with some of the current initiatives that MYND is working on right now?
Yeah, so first of all, Wilf and his team basically did a world-class study. What they brought forward is something that hopefully will revolutionize the treatment and cure, and I use the word cure, of Alzheimer's disease, because what they showed in their study is that in mice, albeit mice very often mimic what happens in humans, but in mice, the Alzheimer plaques, which cause Alzheimer's disease, actually decrease and go away.
Wow.
The blood-brain barrier becomes tighter.
Okay, let me ask you before you go any further. Have you ever seen that in your career before?
No, this is revolutionary. Alzheimer's disease has been on a one-way track. And when you get Alzheimer's disease, there's been some things that have slowed down the progression, but it still progresses. Mm-hmm. If Wilf's research is transferable into humans, which we think it will be, there may well be a cure. A cure for Alzheimer's. So that's why this is incredibly, incredibly important, the work that he just did.
So walk me through, like, Dr. Jefferies, the people that were involved in this research, how optimistic are they through all this? Like, walk me into that room, so to speak. And is this something that they've been probably more encouraged on related to this disease than they ever have in their career?
Oh, yeah. Dr. Jefferies and his team are just so excited. They're doing interviews right now, and they're just very, very excited about this, as you can understand why. Like, the treatment is not tomorrow, but certainly it's more encouraging than anything we've ever done. And MYND has taken a slightly different approach on this research. So we are going to be looking at the psychedelics and psilocybin in general, in particular, when it comes to doing this, because psilocybin has the ability to cross the blood-brain barrier. Psilocybin is an anti-inflammatory, neuroanti-inflammatory, and psilocybin is an anti-angiogenic, which means that it kills the new blood vessels that those plaques put forward. And that was the key to what happened in Wilf's paper, was that it actually killed the blood vessels that fed the plaques, and the plaques diminished in size and went away. And we think that in our research on the psychedelics, there's a chance that that will happen as well.
Wow, that's incredible. Very incredible. So a lot of this stuff, it's just certain parts of the brain, if I'm understanding correctly, are not getting the proper blood flow. Is that correct? And feeds into this plaque?
Not quite. So what happens in any formation, whether it's cancer, whether it's any abnormal formation, they have blood vessels which feed it. And these blood vessels are called Neoangiogenesis, which means new blood vessels in essence. And what this does, those blood vessels provide the blood supply and the food for these plaques. And what Wilf and his team did is they used a anti-cancer drug that cuts away the blood supply from cancers.
Right.
So they hypothesized that it would do the same for these plaques, and indeed it did. And so by cutting the blood supply, as you can imagine, if you cut the food off to any particular thing, it goes down in size. And that's what's happened, is what his paper showed.
What does Dr. Jefferies mean to you and your company to have him part of your board?
And Dr. Jefferies is the backbone of our company.
Yeah.
He's our chief science officer. He's our CEO. And his research is what we're all about.
Yeah.
Our job is to provide resources so that Wilf can continue his research, certainly into the psilocybins and the depression in general, but also into other things that he's doing, that he's working on. And, between what he's doing at UBC, it's incredible.
Yeah.
And this, and again, as you said, I think there needs to be a recognition that the Lancet, where this was published, is one of the top, if not the top, medical journal in the world.
Yes.
So when someone gets published in the Lancet, it's not as though it's in, the journal of bananas kind of thing. This is the real thing.
Yeah, and I think that's important to share for viewers that are watching and still learning more. It's like we do hear a lot of world-renowned doctors and research reports that are done, but to give a better understanding of the overall landscape, to be featured in something like this, it's one of the most respected medical journals in the world, which speaks volumes. Do you feel, in addition to your biomarker division, that you've quickly become the leading position in the industry of Alzheimer's amongst publicly traded companies in the psychedelic space?
Well, I think we're the only ones who've actually found how psychedelics work in Alzheimer's. And we're certainly anticipating that this will be very, very large for us. The biomarkers, again, in diagnosing and treating depression and other psychiatric disorders is really important. But the neuroinflammation and secondarily the anti-angiogenic component of psychedelics, we think are very, very important in what happens in the curing of disease by psychedelics. So the advantage that the psychedelics have, and psilocybin in particular, is that they cross the blood-brain barrier. And people often ask me, like, why do you use psilocybin? What's so special? Why don't you use aspirin? Or why don't you use, these other anti-inflammatories? The key is that it crosses the blood-brain barrier and gets to where the insult is. And that's why these drugs are so effective.
So let's say you have a family member, they have Alzheimer's, they've had it for 4 or 5 years. What happens in that case when you say cure? Because a lot of the medication that somebody is taking this right now, it just slows the process. However, if you're saying it's cured, did they go back to where they were when they originally got it, say 4, 5, 6 years ago? Or how would that work?
Well, to be fair, we don't know because we've never seen anyone that's human that's done it. But in mice, they actually go back. So, it's a very simple thing in mice is you have a maze that they go through. when they have Alzheimer's disease, they can't find their way through the maze.
Right.
But when they're treated with this, they will find their way through the maze. So again, keeping in mind that this is not necessarily psychedelics that he was working on. This is a specific anti-cancer drug, and his research was into that. We're extrapolating that information out because we know how these drugs, how the psychedelics work, and we're anticipating seeing positive results in this.
That's great. Q4, what are your thoughts? I know it's been a little struggling with the markets. You know, the industries continue to go through the summer doldrums, but we have some encouraging news, I think, on the horizon, as I said before, with some of the, companies like Compass Pathways talking about their endpoints with phase 2. But if you're an investor, and if I know what you've explained here today is very, very informative, but from an investment standpoint, do you think we'll start to see some movement here with some positive news in relation to Compass here in Q4?
Yeah, I certainly think we will. The sector is not dead by any means, and the sector is showing positive results. And from our point of view, we're showing how and why these medications work. And that's critically important. It's not if they work. I think everyone has taken the tack that they do work. So it's now who can get it to the market, who can put it out, and what the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, pardon the pun, tends to be the world of depression. It tends to be the world of psychiatric illnesses, which, at the moment, there's massive amount of people that have it, and there's massive amounts of money that are being spent on medications and research in that particular field. And if we can identify and isolate a new type of medication, and this would be the newest family of medication as an antidepressant since the late 80s, this would be the first one to come along. It's huge. And I think people have to recognize in that it's not if it's going to work. It's going to be which one works and which one has the ability to get it across the finish line to the FDA.
Investors could find MYND Life Sciences under what exchange and ticker symbol?
Yeah, we're MYNDF on the OTC and we're MYND on the CSD.
Great. Always love catching up with you. Very informative as usual. But let's keep in touch. And, it's great to have people like you involved in this industry that I believe there's going to be some big change. And the most important thing to think about, too, is people like yourselves that have been in traditional medicine for years, suddenly are jumping into this industry and feel confidently that this will change the healthcare system, which is great. So if there's any people out there wondering whether the industry is going away, it's not, right?
No, it's not going away, and it's only going to get stronger.
Yeah, of course. Okay, let's keep in touch, okay?
Thanks, Shad.
Thanks, Dr. Oberg. Thanks, everyone, for watching, and make sure to like this video, and please feel free to leave a comment. Also, subscribe to this channel and turn on the notifications bell to receive all new videos posting featuring stocks that are moving in the crypto, psychedelic, and cannabis space, and also notifications on monthly cash giveaways. You don't want to miss it. Thanks, everyone.